You know, something I find very strange about this game is its lack of reviews on YouTube. While I can find plenty of reviews of the first Baten Kaitos, as well as reviews tackling both games, actual in-depth reviews of this game specifically are quite hard to come by. So today I hope to expand this game's lack of coverage on YouTube with my own in-depth review of Baten Kaitos Origins for the Nintendo GameCube. Now, just a reminder that videos like these are brought to you by my lovely patrons like Cameron Strauss and Echolocation. For as little as $3 Australian a month, you can get your name shouted out at the start of every Xenosanctum video, as well as access to bonus behind the scenes content, link in the description below. Following the release of Baten Kaitos Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean, developers Monolithsoft and Crescendo would initially choose to wait and see how the first game performed before developing a sequel. While the developers had hoped to turn Baten Kaitos into a continuing series, they were still cautious to immediately pursue a sequel in case the first game didn't succeed. While the original Baten Kaitos didn't see the best sales, strong critical reception from fans and critics alike gave both Monolithsoft and Crescendo the encouragement to greenlight a sequel, and so development of Baten Kaitos 2 began. As you'd expect, Monolithsoft's Yasuyuki Honne would return to direct what was basically his own series, alongside Hiroya Hatsushiba and his team at Crescendo. Despite being greenlit as Baten Kaitos 2, the team quickly decided on a prequel story to be set 20 years before the events of the first game. This plot would seek to go into more detail on the origins of the world and characters in the first game, with several of the original game's cast returning as younger versions of themselves. However, the protagonists would be a group of completely new faces. The task of writing this plot and designing these new characters would fall to none other than a young Core Kojima, who would later go on to co-direct all mainline Xenoblade games. With the story taking shape, the rest of the team would look to find ways to improve the gameplay mechanics from the first Baten Kaitos. This would include streamlining the previous game mechanics in order to reduce their tediousness. One such example would be the halving of the total number of Magnus cards, with a lot more cards being shared amongst the party. Meanwhile, other mechanics such as deck building and side quests would also be simplified in order to deliver a more streamlined game experience. Thanks in part to this streamlining, Baten Kaitos would take only 18 months to complete. Baten Kaitos 2 would be unveiled to Japanese viewers at the 2005 Tokyo Game Show, now with the subtitle of Hajimari no Tsubasa to Kamigami no Shishi. This would loosely translate to Beginning of the Wings in the Air of the Gods. While initially planned as a late 2005 title, the game would be pushed into 2006, with it releasing on the 23rd of February. Once again, the GameCube would be chosen as the desired platform of choice, despite the system sales having not improved much since Baten Kaitos 1. As a result, Baten Kaitos 2 would find itself with very little company, as most other game studios, including Nintendo themselves, having opted to abort their GameCube projects and instead reworking them for other consoles. Despite hardly supporting the system themselves, Nintendo would strangely choose to publish the game themselves over Monolithsoft's parent company of Bandai Namco. While no reason was given for this move, it was likely driven in part by Nintendo's move to buy Monolithsoft, which would occur only a few months after Baten Kaitos 2 came out. Nintendo would also handle publishing the game in NTSC regions. However, they would not publish the game in PAL territories, thus depriving us from playing the game until the 2023 Switch remaster. Nintendo would require an 8.4 to handle the localization, which would be the company's second localization of a Monolithsoft game, with them having just finished Xenosaga Episode 3 on the PlayStation 2. In the process of localizing the game, 8.4 would choose to dump the 2 from the game's title, as well as the subtitle, instead naming the game Baten Kaitos Origins, with hopes that this new title would more clearly communicate the prequel nature of the game. Baten Kaitos Origins would eventually launch in the NTSC regions on the 25th of September 2006, less than 2 months before Nintendo's next-gen Wii console would also launch, thus bringing an end to most GameCube releases. As a result, Baten Kaitos Origins would have the honour of being the last JRPG ever released on the GameCube. So let's see how it turned out. The story of Baten Kaitos Origins begins 20 years before the events of the first game, and we once again find ourselves taking the role as a guardian spirit, which I again called Sormon since it's my gamertag and the name of my Australian politics YouTube channel. Wait, I did that joke already, sorry. Either way, this time we are paired up with a young man by the name of Sagi. Sagi currently serves in the Dark Service, a paramilitary group under the command of Lord Balehite, a high-ranking politician in the Alphard Empire. He is woken in the middle of the night and is summoned to an emergency briefing by the Dark Service's commander. The commander informs the service that they have been tasked with the assassination of none other than Emperor Olgan. This incredible order takes Sagi and the rest of the service by surprise, having none of them raise an objection. Following the briefing, Sagi heads down to the vault to collect his friend Gilo, a mechanical humanoid known as a Paramachia. Gilo is a rather strange Paramachia as he is able to talk and display emotion, despite Paramachia not normally being able to do that. Now paired up, the two leave the base and head to the Emperor's palace. At the palace, the bulk of the Dark Service create a distraction at the front gate while Sagi leads a small strike force to the back entrance. Now inside the palace, Sagi and his team make their way towards the Emperor's chambers, where they find Emperor Olgan in discussion with a mysterious black-haired man. The man takes his leave, thus leaving Sagi free to assassinate the Emperor. However, approaching Olgan, the group realise that he is already dead. Sagi assumes that the black-haired man must have killed the Emperor, however he's given little chance to wonder this as the Dark Service commander breaks in alongside the palace guard. Sagi's task force soon realise that the whole assassination task was a setup as the Dark Service commander accuses Sagi of treason and orders the guards to shoot him. Gilo covers Sagi from the bullets, slowing him and his task force to escape. The group are making their escape alongside a corridor when suddenly a wall crashes in, revealing a giant monster. This monster quickly dispatches Sagi's comrades, leaving just him and Gilo to fight the beast. While initially unable to beat the monster, Gilo suddenly goes berserk and begins violently thrashing the monster to death. For some reason, at the same time Gilo kills the monster, Sagi suddenly gets a sharp pain in his head and passes out. When Sagi awakens, he is on a cliffside with two men that he's never met before. The men refer to Sagi as Mano and act like they have known him for ages. Sagi, still a bit confused, decides to follow the two with hopes of finding out where he is. Eventually the three reach a town where their two friends are waiting. At the town, the fighters discover that the entire population has been killed, leaving only their spirits lingering around. It is around this time that Sagi passes out again. When Sagi reawakens, he is back in the palace with Gilo. Realising that the two still need to escape, they are suddenly met by a young girl to blame, who decides to help and leads the two to a sewer that they can use to escape the palace. Escaping the palace into the city of Mintaka, the two try to escape the Empire and head back to Sagi's home island of Asala. While trying to escape, the two run into more of the Empire's troops, led by none other than a young Giacomo. Luckily, the two are joined by a young lady by the name of Millard, who offers to help the two escape. Beating Giacomo, the three successfully escape Alphard and make their way towards Hasala, where the story continues, in which Sagi, Gilo and Millie will attempt to uncover the truth about the mysterious creature which attacked them, while at the same time trying to stop the schemes of Lord Balehite. For the full story breakdown, you can always read the plot summary or just watch the cutscenes on YouTube. Graphically, Baten Kaitos Origins doesn't change much from the first game. We once again have 3D characters over 2D isometric backgrounds that give off the illusion of 3D thanks to some really well done forced perspective. We also once again find ourselves travelling around the same locations as the previous game. However, we do have some new locations like the Imperial Residence of Greater Mintaka, as well as the new island of Hasala. However, these new locations have come at the cost of some previous locations like Mira not being in the game. While the game hasn't improved much in terms of looks, Baten Kaitos has made some subtle improvements elsewhere in the presentation. For a start, animations of opening chests and using blank magnets have now been sped up, thus allowing for a more smoother gameplay experience. Gameplay is made even more smoother thanks to Sagi's wings, which you can now use to jump up ledges as well as sprint around, unlike Callus, who the developers seem to forget had wings. Another underutilised mechanic that has thankfully improved here is your ability as a guardian spirit to talk with Sagi. When deciding responses, you always want to be on the same wavelength as Sagi, as giving him the desired response increases your chance of drawing better magnets in battle. Speaking about magnets, we need to talk about the new mixing mechanic. Just like in the first game, we once again can collect the essence of things around the world and trap them inside blank magnets cards to use later as part of a quest. However, here in Origins, we can now not only use blank magnets in quests, but also mix and map trapped essence to create new magnets in a process called mixing. Mixing doesn't only work for blank magnets, as we can also mix blank magnets with battle magnets to create new and improved battle magnets to use in combat. Getting away from magnets and instead focusing on the party, Baten Kaitos Origins halves the cast size from the previous game, leaving us with a party of the three previously mentioned characters of Sagi, Gilo and Millie. While I personally like the bigger cast sizes, Origin makes up for its small cast in the quality of its three leads. Millie is anything but your dingy heroine, and Gilo's reaction to anyone who he doesn't like is hilarious. I also like how Saki constantly finds herself playing mediator between Millie and Gilo. In general, Origins is able to find that sweet spot with its three-man party that we also see in games like Resonance of Fate, with each of the party members given ample time to play off one another in a way no 6 or 7-man party could possibly hope to achieve. Along with reducing the cast size, Baten Kaitos Origins also does away with the previous game's odd levelling up and gold systems. Gone is the whole visiting the church and selling photographs, as we now have a classic RPG system of levelling up and gaining gold at the end of fights. While we no longer level up at the church, we still need to visit it in order to class up our Magnus deck, as well as equip auras to your party members to enhance them in combat. Like last time, we can visit the church via any blue save flower. However, alongside the church, we can now visit the clay town of Sedna and help rebuild it following its destruction. We can also visit the Colosseum to test our strength in battle, which, without further ado, let's talk about. Baten Kaitos Origins makes some drastic changes from the first game when it comes to combat. While attacks are still made from Magnus, we no longer have individual decks for the party members. Instead, all party members play cards from the same deck. This party-wide deck also never runs out, with all play cards being initially put back into the draw pile after being played. This means we no longer have to waste turns shuffling the deck. The drawing of Magnus is not the only difference, as the playing of Magnus has also been changed. Gone are the poker style of playing Magnus in straights and pairs, as we now have the count-up system. When a Magnus with a number is played, the next Magnus must have a number higher in order to be strung into the combo. Thus, the longest combo is most optimal to start with a ranked 1 card followed by a ranked 2 and so on. While you can't follow up higher level Magnus with lower level Magnus, characters can now string together combos between each other using relay combos. If a character ends their combo with a special and another party member is next in line, that party member can then jump in and continue the combo with their own Magnus. While the party all draw from the same deck, they do have some unique Magnus that only they can play. For a start, each character has their own unique equipment Magnus. These rank 0 cards can be played at the start of a combo and give the character either an attack or a defense buff with the occasional elemental attribute. Each equipment will have a certain number of uses that will expire after a set number of attacks are made or damage received, depending on the type of equipment used. The equipment will also expire if another equipment Magnus is played, as the character can only have one item equipped at a time. While equipment Magnus are used to start combos, special attack Magnus are used to finish them. These Magnus come in either ranked 4, 5 and 6, and just like equipment they too tend to be unique to the individual party members, although there are some specials that can be used by all 3. Unlike regular attacks, specials cannot be played unless the MP gauge has been filled to the correct level. The MP gauge is displayed here, and it is filled by making attacks as well as playing special MP filling Magnus. As the MP gauge fills up, it will gain levels, with the maximum level being determined by your class rank. Each special has a cost associated, with ranked 4 specials costing 1 level, ranked 5 specials costing 2, and ranked 6 costing 3 levels. Meanwhile, if you let the MP gauge reach level 5, you also have the opportunity to activate Burst Mode, which will cause all specials to cost absolutely nothing for a short period of time. Speaking about time, the time it takes between your character's actions are now determined by the number of cards they play. Origins uses a similar cooldown timer as seen in a lot of Square Enix JRPGs, with it filling up based on the number of Magnus played by a single fighter, and then depleting over time. That fighter will not be able to act again until the gauge is depleted. If the character is frozen or knocked out, their cooldown gauge will temporarily freeze until they recover from the status ailment. These status ailments can also be applied to enemies too, thus preventing them from taking turns. While Origins' combat might at first appear to be a game of spam every card on your deck until the enemy is dead, you do want to be somewhat strategic in your playstyle. For a start, you'll need to keep an eye on your party members' health, and take breaks every now and then to use healing Magnus on them. Unlike the first game, healing Magnus can no longer be comboed as they lack a spirit number, however they now heal for much greater amounts. However, they no longer go rotten like the food healing items of the previous game. Alongside healing Magnus, there are also several other non-combat Magnus cards that can be played, including powerful artifacts, which like specials also cost MP to use. Going over to the characters, Saki is your pretty typical protagonist, wielding a sword and unleashing a series of fast flurry attacks. Meanwhile, Gilo is more of the party's mage, with his ability to unleash magical attacks, including some powerful sweep attacks via his specials. Meanwhile, Millie has the advantage of playing unique +1 and +2 attack cards in between her regular cards, allowing her to run much longer combos than the other members. The overall, Baten Kaitos Origins delivers an even faster paced card battle system than the predecessor, and this fast pace is also felt in the music too. Motoi Sakuraba returns back to the composing role after previously composing the soundtrack to the first Baten Kaitos. Being set in a lot of the same locations as the previous game, Baten Kaitos Origins uses a bunch of tracks from the first game. However, for the most part we have completely original themes, and oh boy are they some impressive themes. Just like with the last game, Sakuraba is once again in top form, composing some incredible tracks. Obviously, being Sakuraba, I have to talk about the battle themes, including what might be one of the greatest battle themes ever composed in the valedictory Elegy. What can I say, it was literally listening to this incredible piece in Super Smash Bros. For Wii U which got me interested in the series in the first place. While the valedictory Elegy steals the show for me, I don't want to discredit the other amazing battle themes like Iconoclasm and Poacher, with the latter being kind of familiar to those who watch my Tales of Destiny 2 retrospective. I'm still a bit on the fence here, but Baten Kaitos Origins might possibly have my favourite Sakuraba score, even topping his work on games like Tales of the Abyss. Baten Kaitos Origins doesn't only have a good soundtrack, as this time the team has dumped ArtQuest for an actual decent English dubbing group. As a result, we now have some solid English voice performances from the characters.
He's enjoying this, isn't he?
Boy, do I really feel like kicking myself now.
While not quite as high as the standards in the Xeno series, Origins cast is definitely able to keep me invested in the story with well acted performances. We also now have the somewhat strange addition of a battle announcer in combat, giving us almost a fighting game feeling to the battle system.
You win! Round 2! Fight!
To finish up the sound section, I should also talk about the opening cinematic. After the first game's kerfuffle in trying to get full motion video cutscenes, Origins decides to instead use a series of animated drawings in its opening. This opening is also used for the game's first cutscene, and as a result it's way more enjoyable to watch than the janky mess which was the first game's opening cinematic. You know, I think I might just have discovered Monolithsoft's most underrated game in Baten Kaitos Origins. Being locked to just the NTSC regions and being released on the practically dead GameCube, Origins is a game that hardly anyone talks about these days. As I said in my introduction, even videos on the first Baten Kaitos only seem to mention this game as an afterthought. However, in my honest opinion, Baten Kaitos Origins is quite frankly a superior game in almost every way. Story-wise, Origins offers a way more interesting plot involving both political intrigue and ancient discoveries that I found way more interesting than the generic first game's plot of stop the evil empire from resurrecting an evil god. Along with the more interesting story, we also have a much stronger cast, thanks in part due to much better voice acting. While they might be a smaller cast than the first games, their backstories and interactions with one another are just way more compelling. Even over on the gameplay side of things, Baten Kaitos Origins is a way better game than the first one. Origins fixes a ton of the smaller problems I had with the first game, from actually making use of the character's wings to finding a better way to utilise Blank Magnus outside of random side quests. Also said there is literally a Colony 6 rebuild quest which was like one of the best parts of the first Xenoblade game. However, arguably the game improves the most has to be the combat. While I somewhat liked the card-based combat of the first game, I also had a ton of issues with it, from having to constantly rearrange the decks of each party member to how healing food items went rotten after a while. Origins does away with practically all these problems, and as a result I vastly prefer its combat system. However, I feel like I should be fair and give some criticisms on this game. While Origins does somewhat improve the Magnus mechanics from the first game, I'm still not the biggest fan of it. I still don't like the Blank Magnus system of trapping essences to use later, as I much prefer just to pick up items. I also don't like how combat is too dependent on the luck of your draw, even if the game does try to manipulate the draw to benefit you. Also, once again, fleeing battle should not be tied to Magnus, as I don't want to waste time in combat dumping Magnus until I get my escape Magnus. Well, despite it being only our second video, we're at the end of the Baten Kaitos series. I hope I was able to give you guys a fair look at this kind of underrated duo of GameCube JRPGs. Hopefully I've encouraged you to go out and buy the remakes now that they're on the Switch, and hopefully one day looking forward to a third game coming out. In the meantime, while I don't have any more Baten Kaitos games to review, that doesn't mean I'm done following the exploits of Honne and his B team. You see, 2006 would introduce the world to the motion control games of the Nintendo Wii, and Honne's team were very interested to see how they can make a game for this new system. So come back next time as I dive into one of Monolithsoft's strangest games in Disaster Day of Crisis.